Well, let's go ahead and get started with what we've got going on for today. Excuse me. Okay, so first things first, I'm on the Canvas page. If you go to syllabus, today's the 12th. So we have, we're right here. Tomorrow night at midnight, your first homework assignment is due. And so I just wanted to run through that quickly, make sure that we're all on the same page. A lot of what we cover today will be related to that. And again, the goal with this is to just get your mind into thinking about game development and the transition from 2D to 3D, which is what we're going to go over today. So for your first homework assignment, this is what we've got. You will turn this on in through Canvas. You'll just upload it. And what you're going to do is you're going to research any game franchise that started out in 2D and then switch to 3D. Okay, so Mario, for example, we'll stick with the classics. Mario started out 2D, several 2D versions between the old school NES to Super Nintendo, and then with the Nintendo 64 transition to 3D. Same thing with Zelda series. So Zelda obviously started out 2D. There was a top-down 2D and then a side-scrolling 2D. And then it went back to top-down for Super Nintendo before ultimately making the shift to 3D in the Nintendo 64. You can pick any example that you want. I'd like for you to do not 2.5D. I'd like for you to do 2D to 3D, because that's really what we're going to focus on here. I don't really consider 2.5D to be 3D. It's more like using 3D assets in a 2D environment. So stay away from that. Yeah. So there are some examples where it worked really well for the franchise and examples where it did not work really well for the franchise. Sonic. So what I want you to do is pick any game, and I'm not asking you to look for an example of good or bad. I just want you to pick one and talk about why it was good, why it was bad. And what I want you to do is compare the success of the 2D games, with the 3D games. So I'm reading chat. Hold on. Let me go through this and then I'll answer questions. So compare how well it did in 2D versus how well it did in 3D, and whether the 2D or 3D version was more or less successful, and why. I want specific reasons and not just your opinion. We don't need to get super technical with citing and proper format of citing resources and that sort of thing. I'm not super interested in that. I just want you to tell me where you got the information from. If you have sales data, that's great. If you have even something as simple as user scores, and I know it probably didn't have official user scores back then, but even if it's an official opinion article by a reputable website or something like that, that's fine as well. Excuse me. Just something that is published on the internet, that tends to capture the overall impression of a particular game. Yeah, specifically, here's what I want you to focus on. I want you to compare the design features of the games, and talk about that and how that related to the success or failure of the game. Okay, so for example, yes. Let me say it this way. I want you to focus on like the mechanics of the game. So for example, if we take Sonic, for example, and let's talk about 2D Sonic. What was great about 2D Sonic, like the original Sega Sonic? What was good about that? What was fun? Okay. Yeah, level design and speed. And again, talk out loud. Don't rely on chat.
It was able to be unique in its Like, cause I remember reading an article about Sonic, and it mentioned like they had to balance the speed with a bit of challenge. Like if he was playing Mario, that would be like too easy.
Right. Right. And that's exactly right. What was fun about Sonic was the speed, like how fast you could move.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question,
Yeah, hold on. I'm trying to figure out
sir?
where that I'm trying to figure out where that noise is coming from.
It was Keith's thing, his thingy lit up. I
Got
thought
it.
he was gonna ask a question.
Yeah, I was just, and you answered it. Give us some food, Keith. And you answered it, Susie. I was just asking, like, what made Sonic fun? And the idea is speed is what made it fun. Like, it was a really fast platformer, and that's what set it apart from Mario. That was a traditional, hop from one platform to another, make it to the end of the level. Sonic captured that, but what was unique and fun was the speed. Okay, and so when you look at the success of 2D Sonic, that's what it relied heavily on. It was the fun speed factor. You knew you were getting a platformer that wasn't like anything else. And when they made the transition from 2D to 3D, what made Sonic awesome in 2D did not translate to 3D. The way that they created that game, the main mechanic was not focused so much on speed. It made like this awkward mechanic, and it didn't translate well. And so that's kind of what I want you to focus on when you analyze the transition of a title or a franchise from 2D to 3D. Focus on what made it great or not great in 2D and what made it great or not great in 3D. And did the things that worked well translate to a 3D environment? Okay, 3D isn't necessarily better. It's not necessarily worse. It just creates a different kind of environment that can be better suited for certain games, and it can be suited not as well. So those are the kind of things I want you to focus on. Okay, so we're looking at a one-page typed, double-spaced is fine. Just submit it online, through Canvas right here. Okay, let me look at the questions. Can 2D to 3D mean that the game ended up using 3D element models, or is it an actual change to 3D? So it should be an actual change to 3D, not just I went from using sprites to 3D models, but we're still locked in 2D. That's not really what we're looking for here. Like Mortal Kombat tried to do a little bit. Obviously, they switched to 3D models over sprites, but they had like they added elements where you could like sidestep stuff. And I've never played a ton of Mortal Kombat, but I've seen they've incorporated depth elements trying to include that third axis. And so if you want to go that route, that's fine. You can do that. But avoid, like Smash Brothers is a 2.5D game where there's really no depth involved. It's 3D models locked to two axes, and that's not really what we're looking for here. Yes, double spaced. Yes, GTA is another good example like that. So something like Pokemon would not count. I've never. Yes, Zoe. Mathematically, yes and no. Depending on your engine, you're still going to have to deal with that third axis in terms of keeping track of the third point in the vector. There's not a whole lot of design difference between 2.5D and 3D. You're not going to be using sprites in 2.5D. Really, it's a 3D game that you have locked, and you're using a camera that's not going to be moving in all the degrees of freedom. So I never played Pokemon, so something like I know there are Pokemon video games, but I don't know if that's a thing. I don't know how those games work, so I can't answer that question. Maybe somebody else would have a better idea. Okay, there you go. Okay, well, that's fine. And it doesn't have to be something that the transition could have been relatively new. It doesn't have to be, okay, Nintendo 64 era type thing. Okay. You're saying League, as in like League of Legends or Rocket League? I said two things. Okay, yeah, Pokemon's fine. I don't think there was a League of Legends that was 2D before. I think there's just been one version of League of Legends. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think League of Legends transitioned from 2D to 3D. Okay. As a general rule, that applies. Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other big questions on the assignment before we move on? Right.
Yeah. One question I had for the pager or the paper was, can it be double spaced or does it single spaced?
Double spaced is fine.
Okay. All right.
Again, I'm not super concerned with length. Just make sure you've got enough information to make your case. And as far as sources, just put at the end where you got the information from. Website link is fine. I don't need anything super formatted, particular like that. Just give me the website you got the information from, or the magazine if you have an old magazine from 15 years ago, whatever. Wikipedia is fine. Again, it does. I'm not super interested in it being like an official source. I'm interested in you diving into why the game did or did not do well when it transitioned to 3D. That's what I'm interested in. Okay. All right, cool. We good to move on?
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay, so this is due tomorrow night. Make sure you do it. Submit it through Canvas. Okay. Anybody's first time in here, meaning you weren't here last time, which was Tuesday. Anybody not here on Tuesday? Okay, just if you weren't here on Tuesday, make sure you look at these two things. Kind of goes over the course, what to expect. And this is your big semester long project. Okay, so make sure you read through this. That's where the majority of your grade is going to come from. There's a handful of assignments, homework assignments that you'll turn in. One's due tomorrow night, but most of your grade is coming from this game project where you'll spend most of your time working. Okay. Okay, so today we are going to run through some information about getting you started on your game. Okay, so the kind of things you need to be thinking about, the kind of things you need to be planning. We'll take a look at a couple game design documents for very, very, very old games that I did, like maybe before some of you were born. Gosh, that makes me feel old. But we'll look at some sample game design documents so that you guys can get an idea of what it is that you need to be thinking out as you prepare your game. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so we talked about this before. You should, when you're thinking about your project, when you're thinking about the game that you want to create, you should select a game that's well suited for a 3D environment. This ties directly into the homework assignment that you're doing. I don't want you to set yourself up for failure by picking a game genre or a game mechanic that is not suited well for 3D. Okay. Again, we're not saying that 3D games are better. We're not saying that 2D games are better. We're saying that certain games work better in 2D and certain games work better in 3D. And because we are learning 3D games this semester, you should select one that's going to complement a 3D environment. Okay. Okay, let's move on. So, is anybody having difficulty coming up with a scope that is appropriate for their project? Have you guys all been thinking about what game you were thinking?
Yeah, I've been thinking about like something that was like more like a third person based, but I kind of wanted to range like the scope of that because I realized something like that might take a long time because it's like you got to do like running animations, jumping animations, stuff like that. So
Yeah, so good thought. The running and jumping animations are something that you guys can grab from free sources online. In fact, let me take a second and show you that. Do this here. Okay, those were. All right, you want to see this? I think
The cursor. See, my bad.
somebody saying something. I don't know if this is mine. Okay, so this is Mixamo. It's just mixamo.com. And you'll get two really cool things here. So first of all, yeah, there's at the top, there's characters and animations. These are 100% free. You can grab these. These are 3D. And we can go through how to get these into a project. But this is where you're going to get a ton of animations and find everything that you need. So you can kind of scroll through these, everything from cartoony to futuristic. There's 3 pages of them. Yeah. From normal looking humans to fantasy type ones to cartoony Elvis. We'll use this character. So the idea here is you pick a model and then you can apply animations to it. So big picture wise, the difference between sprites, which is what you used in 2D, and 3D models, which is what we use in 3D, is this. With 3D models, you can apply animations to the model, and those animations can be used on any model that has a similar skeleton structure. Okay, the skeleton structure is called a rig, R-I-G. And the cool thing is it allows you to reuse a lot of different things. So for example, if you think back to, let's just go with Mario, because everyone's familiar with Mario. If we were making a 2D Mario game and we were using sprites, we would have a sprite sheet that has a series of separate images that when played one after another really fast gives the appearance that Mario is moving, he's animating. Okay, everyone's familiar with sprite sheets? Yes. Okay. With 3D models, that's not the way it works. Okay, and so if we go back to that Mario example and we wanted to change the way Mario looked, we wanted to change his outfit. So for example, in the original NES, you had Mario and Luigi, and the only difference between the two was the color. Those 2 different colors were 2 different sets of sprite sheets. Okay, they each had to be animated separately. Okay, you can't simply take an animation and throw colors on it and have it work. Okay, so you had an entire set of animation sprites for Luigi, an entire set of animation sprites for Mario. With 3D models, it doesn't work like that. Okay, you have a model which is simply a skeleton structure, and then you have a texture that's placed on top of that. Okay, the texture is what gives the shape and color to the actual model. Okay, and then we have animations, and animations can simply get applied to it. Okay, so if we want to take our Elvis and give him a slow jog backwards, we can do it like this. Okay, if we want to have Elvis punching, we can do it like this. Okay, now if I go back to characters, I can pick a completely different character. And the same animation can be applied to that character. Okay. Because the animation data is separate from the model data. And essentially the way animations work is, think about, like, so look at me for a second. Think about my arm. In a rig, what we have is a series of bones and joints. Okay, so I've got my left arm here. We have like my wrist joint, my elbow, my shoulder, my chest, my neck, and head. And all the animation data contains is it refers to a particular joint and a position. And just like a sprite sheet moves the image a little bit each frame, and animation simply moves the joint a little bit each frame. So this punch animation simply has the left arm moving, and obviously there's his whole body is moving with this, but it simply controls the points at which the joints should be moved. So even though we have this model, really what we have is an underlying skeleton that's being moved with the animation, and the texture that we see on top, which is shirt and shorts and the hair and the skin, that is moving along with the model. And so because of this, we can take any animation and apply it to any model as long as the skeleton structure is the same. And typically for humanoids, they are the same. And so we could take any one of these characters and apply the same punching, okay? Which is really cool, because then it allows us to, you can use any of these animations and apply them to whatever character you want to use, okay? Good so far? All right. So this is where you'll have access to lots of animations, and there's 52 pages of animations.
Just,
You can just
I have a
search.
quick question.
Sure.
So would it be possible to create our own character model and just rig it up with a skeleton so that it would accept these animations?
You can, yeah. That's way beyond the scope of what we're going to cover in the class. But yeah, if you know how to model using 3ds Max, Maya, Blender, any of those, then you can use that model. You have to rig it, but that you could then take any of these animations and apply it to that. Other questions? Over Matt Stetson. Okay. Okay, so that is Mixamo. This and all of these are free, and you can do all kind of. You can just search if you have a particular animation that you're looking for, and go from there. Yeah, so here's my advice on this sort of stuff. Don't go too deep down the rabbit hole. You've got a lot to do with your game. I would not use this class as an opportunity for you to try out 3D modeling. This is not the time to do that. Do it on your own side, because modeling is not for the faint of heart when you are getting started. Okay, and it will take an entire semester to model a character correctly and learning from start to finish. And so now is not the time to do that. You need to get started with your game, which is why I'm showing you this now. Grab a free character, grab some animations, and get started. And I'll kind of go through how that works. Okay. Mixamo does offer a automatic character rig. If you just go upload character, I've not done it because I avoid modeling. But if you just drag and drop, typically an FBX is the file extension for a model. OBJ or an object is a more generic file format for 3D models, but just put it here and it'll automatically rig it for you, which is pretty cool. Okay. All right, let's get out of here. Go back to this. So use that website, Unity's asset store. So let me go back. The Unity asset store also has, it is a marketplace for all kind of stuff, scripts, audio, graphics, models, animations, packages, completed projects, anything you can imagine they have here. Most of it is paid, but there is some, Unity does provide a handful of free assets. I don't even know if we can do, if there's a way to search just for free assets. I don't know, there may be kind of like a advanced filter. Free models.
It'll be on the side. They kind of hide it. They may, it's
here we go,
so
pricing.
annoying to find it, but yeah.
Free assets. There you go. So if you're looking for something specific, these are all free. And so you can kind of get in here and grab free stuff. There's lots of stuff that you can do. Okay. Okay. That should be all of the assets that you need in terms of models and animations. Okay. Between Mixamo and the Unity asset store, that's fine. You should have plenty of free assets to use there. Okay. So back to our game. These are the things that you should be thinking about. The first thing are genre, style, core mechanics, and fun feature. These are the things that you should be focused on with your game when you are planning it out. Did you guys, and I'm trying to figure out how much to cover and not bore you, but still give you the information that you need. How much of this did you cover in intro to game development? Did you cover how to start planning a game and what to be thinking about?
Yes, we did.
Okay. All right. So I won't go into this too much.
From what I remember.
Okay. And all of you, or I'll say most of you, are probably gamers or familiar enough with what makes a good game that we don't need to go into this too much. But you really, genre and style are pretty common sense. You'll pick that up quick. The core mechanics and the fun features are really what you should be focused on at this point. Okay, so the core mechanics, a game mechanic is something that the user does in the game. It's so if we're looking at Mario, for example, the core mechanic in Mario is platforming. It's running and jumping on things, on platforms, on enemies. Another mechanic of the game is the whole power up, getting mushrooms, getting flowers, that sort of thing. So those are mechanics of your game. You need to really plan out what those are, what the player is going to be doing over and over again. And then you need to also be focused on the fun features, like what's fun about playing your game, what will keep the player playing. At this stage, we don't need to like super focus on making your game unique. Like nobody's making the next amazing, like never before seen mechanic game in this class. Not to say you couldn't take it and do something with it in the future, but for the scope of what we are attempting to accomplish within a semester, I don't care if your game is very similar to another game that exists already. That's totally fine. Okay. I'm reading text, mainly writing games, but we want to write one for each game we create. So unlike Keith, unlike what you guys did in intro to game development, you're only going to create a single game this semester, one game, not a bunch of little games or little projects. It's going to be one throughout the course of the semester, and you will create a game design document for it. In fact, I think that's your third homework assignment is what you'll need to do. Okay. All right, I'm not going to read this to you because you guys have all played different genres. This is for kind of, that was an example. If you're going to do an adventure game, which you're more than welcome to, just be careful because adventure games have a tendency to incorporate a lot of RPG elements, and that is a massive time sink. Lots of fun, but not necessarily the best choice for a single semester. Let's move on. Okay, so just some different examples of style. Same concept, like if your game has a lantern that you're walking around with. These are just some different style themes. Something that you need to think about that often gets overlooked is the style and the theme to your game. So is it steampunk? Is it fantasy? Is it modern? Is it urban? Is it, you know, there's lots of different themes. Are you going to go like old school Roman or medieval type? Find your theme and make sure that everything ties together. Okay. We talked about core mechanics already. So we talked about Mario. What's the core mechanic in Zelda? What are you doing over and over in Zelda?
Swinging your sword.
Yeah, definitely. Yep, puzzles. Puzzles are a huge mechanic in Zelda. What else?
Collecting stuff.
Yeah, boss fights.
I said exploring. Does that count?
Yeah, exploration is definitely a game mechanic. And the idea with mechanics, again, is it ties to the homework assignment you guys are doing. Some mechanics are better suited for 3D. Some, hey. All right, Anthony will get that. I recently played through Ocarina of Time with my kids, and they're like, that fairy is kind of annoying. It was like, it won't shut up, it keeps yelling at us. So yeah, Anthony, I totally get it. Hey, look, what's his name? Navi? Is that the name? I think it's Navi. Yeah, something like that. That was fun. We went from Ocarina of Time to Breath of the Wild. The game genre has come a long way. We'll say that much. It was good. We skipped all the games in between. What's that? Whoever's talking, I can't hear you. Okay. Yeah, because we were going to play through all of them, and so we started off with the original. Yeah, Zoe, you're right. We started with the original Nintendo NES Zelda, the top-down one, and we played through that, and they really loved it. And then we played Zelda 2, which is the Adventures of Link, and that's the side-scrolling one that really got the kids appreciating the modern game design principles of being nice to the people playing your games. That game was obnoxiously hard. And there's no like, oh, I died, I just have to restart. Like you had to go all the way back to the beginning of the game. If you've never played through Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link, and you think Dark Souls is difficult, go back and play that game. Find an emulator. or get an NES Classic and play it. It's hard. Who said that? I can't hear. Somebody's really soft. Yeah, so we played A Link to the Past after Zelda 2. A Link to the Past was always my favorite game. It was just really, really good and really ahead of its time, in my opinion. And then from A Link to the Past, we played Ocarina of Time, which was, again, really good. And then we jumped to Breath of the Wild, and Breath of the Wild was just, it was really, really well done. They did so many things right in that game. So that's probably my new favorite Zelda game, although A Link to the Past is just classic. So I don't know how we got on that. We were talking about mechanics. Yes, there are certain mechanics that are better suited for 3D, and certain ones that are better suited for 2D, and certain ones that can be pulled off in either genre. So Susie, I think you were talking about exploration and whether or not exploration is a mechanic. Yes, absolutely. Obviously, we would think that exploration is better suited for a 3D environment. Okay, and we could kind of understand why. Can you guys think of any games that did a really good job of using an exploration mechanic but was 2D?
Does that remake of the I was thinking of like that Game Boy Zelda, the one with that weird genie thing or something. I can't remember for the life of me what it's called, but
Link's
there was like a
Awakening?
remake of it recently on the Switch or something.
Link's Awakening, is that the one you're talking about, Susie?
It might be that one. Like it wasn't Zelda 2, I don't think it, because it was like top down.
I think it was Link's Awakening because it had the windfish egg in it. That and the genie you're talking about is called Genie Boss.
Oh yeah, that thing. Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Mhm.
Okay. That makes sense. So I'm reading kind of the ones up top. So 2D, they listed some good games. Metroid was the one I was thinking of, as far as being really like having exploration as one of the main mechanics of the game, but it being kind of like a platform shooter. And it really created its own genre by having like taking a little bit, like taking a mechanic from here and taking a mechanic from here of games that were successful and kind of putting them together and creating the own genre. And so that is definitely intense. That was a Flash, wasn't Fancy Pants a Flash game?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Pretty sure. Yeah.
Yep, my childhood.
That I spent, well, we talked about my past with Flash games. I think I have some. I haven't looked at this in a long time. Oh, where's mine? I have all the Flash games. Here are the Flash games. Wow. I haven't looked at these in forever. I don't have. I remember Fancy Pants though. I do remember that one. Final Fantasy II had a lot of good exploration aspects in them, and it was 2D. So you can do it. It's just different. The exploration and the way in which you introduce it into the game has to be a little bit different. So keep that in mind. What time's this class over? 12:45. Okay, so moving on. So last thing that you need to be thinking about are the fun features. And we mentioned this above briefly, but this really what is going to separate your game from others. And again, we're not necessarily trying to create the next best game ever in this course, but these are considerations that you have to think about when you are designing your game. What is going to be fun about it? You don't have to necessarily approach it from a mindset of, I need to make it so that whoever is considering the game is going to pick this game over all the other games, but your game does need to have elements of fun that would encourage somebody to keep playing it. Okay. Generically, here is kind of a good way to think about this. This is the flow chart or the flow channel that you need to keep in mind when you are looking at balancing difficulty with challenges. Okay, so the basic idea is when you first start off, the skills that your player has are going to be low. As your player continues to interact with your game, they will develop the skills and mechanics needed to do better in your game. As that happens, the challenge should go up accordingly. So this chart kind of shows what can happen, both good and bad, when that is out of balance. So for example, if your player is really good at the game or has really high skill and the challenge is low, they get bored. If the opposite is true, where the challenge or the difficulty is really high and they've got low skills, that's really frustrating for them. You want to keep them right in this flow channel where the difficulty matches their skills. Okay, and there's lots of different ways to do that, and we're not necessarily going into like dynamic difficulty adjustment and that sort of thing, but you want to make sure that your game balances the challenge, the difficulty with the skill of the player. Okay. We have Navi here. So what are some generic fun features within a game? Anybody? What makes a game fun? Okay, good. Risk reward.
Strategy.
Yes, and so risk reward and strategy are literally the same thing. The number one thing that you want to focus on is player agency. Like, so that the player, as they are playing, need to feel like the choices that they make matter. Okay, and so if whatever they're doing in the game, they need to make it seem like, or they need to understand that whatever they choose to do has an impact on what happens in the game. That's really important to make sure that it doesn't force them into a particular outcome, that sort of thing. And all the things that you guys mentioned, power-ups, collecting, anticipation, experimenting, all of that sort of stuff is really important. And as we've discussed, are better suited for certain types of games. Although, as we have also discussed, mixing elements from different genres can create new games. So, for example, a platformer, traditionally a 2D platformer, before Metroid didn't have elements of exploration. So adding that in can be fun. So if you're looking for something new, you want to make something unique, try mixing some of the game mechanics that traditionally haven't been put together and see what you get. Okay. You can also, if you're looking for some inspiration, go to Steam, go to YouTube, and search for indie games, because most of the indie games that are out there, none of us have ever heard of. So you can discover some interesting games that maybe you don't want to play, but you might get some ideas from. Okay, so just stuff like that can be pretty cool. Okay, we don't need to do this. So last thing, we'll finish up with this. Keep your game simple. I've said this before, don't bite off more than you can chew. Better to do a game with small scope really well, rather than trying to put too much in a game and then you don't get a chance to do any of it the way it needs to be done. Okay. Are any of you like really dead set on doing an RPG? Anybody?
I'd like to do a simple tactics RPG.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Next, when you are planning out your game, focused on the mechanics first and the features that will make your game fun. Build the game around that. That's my advice to you. Okay. Yeah, so groups are tough. And so Anthony, the very first RPG I made was it was a 2D turn-based RPG. It's a good place to start if you're doing an RPG.
Yeah, I've always wanted to make one, but I just haven't for some reason.
Well, it's a lot of work. But second, so let's go back to the group thing, and we'll kind of we're wrapping up here. We talked last class about specific, like, and I gave you guys some advice as far as how to get into the industry, and like if you want to pursue a career in game development, what your different options are. I told you that my advice to you was to focus on finishing your degree, getting a job, doing whatever in computer science, and making games on the side. And I think that's something you should start now. Okay, so even if you are a full-time student and you are even working, there's still time on the side to make games. Okay, even if you're making games for your class. Okay, and still see your friends and family. It's what I did in college, and so I can tell you it can be done. I was a full-time student. I played lacrosse in college, and I made games, and still had friends and saw them. And so I can tell you it can be done. And that is my advice to you as far as how you should approach it. Now, a couple caveats and tying this into the comment about groups. Making a game with a group of people or finding a group of people that are interested in making games is a double-edged sword, and it's risky. I've been at UNC Charlotte for 10 years, I think, and teaching game development classes. And I have seen only, I think, a handful of times, like 3 or 4, where groups of students have actually created something. And the reason for that is there is often a very big disconnect in terms of motivation and being on the same page between people in a group at the college level. What I see most often, and I'm talking specifically about a group of people making a game outside of a class. Okay, this is not a group setting where everybody has to do it or they're going to fail. I'm talking about you pursuing something outside of class, because you guys are talking about, I'd like to make a turn-based RPG, but not for this class. And so as it ties to what we talked about last class, I would be careful of joining or making games in a group of people that you don't know really well, or you haven't done a bunch of stuff together in the past, because more often than not, what I have seen happen is it just turns into a frustrating situation where the other people in the group aren't doing what you would like them to do in terms of the amount of effort they're putting in. And it just puts a bad taste in your mouth for the whole thing. That's my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth. It has worked in the past, but I don't want to set you up for failure. So statistically speaking, it doesn't go well. Again, take that for whatever it's worth. Questions on that before we finish up with this? Okay. And yes, working in a group can be great, but it's also not necessary. I don't work in groups. I just, yeah, I'd rather not. But yeah, and Colin, I totally know what you mean. Yes, most of the games out there are made by large studios or even medium-sized established studios. And I understand you were talking about something different. Totally get it. All right, so back to this. So I gave you the advice of focusing first on the mechanics of your game and the fun features, and then building your game around that. I will add on to that to plan and work on your game in tiers and iterations. Okay, I can tell you from experience that you cannot spend too much time on one thing. You have a very limited amount of time, and you need to work on your game in iterations, meaning if, let's just say we're making a third person shooting game, I don't know. The very first thing I would do is get my character in the game and get the character moving. Okay, I wouldn't add a ton of animations. I would just get the character moving, and then I would, add the enemies and be able to handle the whole shooting aspect. But I wouldn't go super deep in any area. You want to, again, build your game in iterations. So go through the bare minimum of adding everything that you need to accomplish the core mechanic, which in this case is running around and shooting things, and then go back and do a second iteration. So once I have that working, now I'm going to go in and allow my character to jump. I'm going to add obstacles. I might add different types of enemy, like whatever it is, you want to build your game in iterations so that you don't run out of time. Because I see all the time what happens is I get my character in the game and I get him animated. So now I can run forward and run backwards. And oh, that's so much fun. It's so exciting. Now let me add in all of these animations. And 2 months later, I've got a character that can do a ton of stuff, but a very empty game outside of that. Okay, so build it slow, piece by piece, not I'm going to like dump all of my effort in the first month into one aspect of the game, because that's how you end up cramming and that's how you end up in trouble. Build it in iterations, build it in tiers. So tier 1, I'm going to do extremely basic character movement. I'm going to do extremely basic enemies. I'm going to do extremely basic environment. Once I have that, then I'm going to go to tier 2, second iteration, and now I'm going to add more advanced character movement. I'm going to add more advanced environment stuff, boxes and that sort of thing. Environments are often a huge time sink. It gets cool adding all this stuff, adding cameras and lighting and all of these effects. Don't fall for it. Okay, do it in iterations. What you want to be doing at the end of the semester, right before you turn the game, is all of that pretty stuff. You don't want to be doing core game stuff at the end of the semester. Okay, so build it in iterations. Okay. And I can tell you that from experience. Do it that way, you'll be much better off. Okay. And write your ideas down, especially as you're going through your game design document. You're very welcome, very welcome. And that's it. We'll stop there for today. Where are we? Modules. What we'll do next class is we'll talk about game design documents. So we'll go through 2 examples. These are actual games that, well, I did this tower defense. I designed this game but never made it. I started making it, but I never actually finished it. So we'll take a look at 2 sample design documents, and we'll talk about what you guys need to consider for your game design documents, and we'll go from there. Okay. Questions for me? Yeah, it's a classic tower defense game, 2D. It's a Flash game. You might even be able to find it online still. Questions, comments? It's called Hands of War Tower Defense. Hands of War it's an RPG series I did, and then I did a tower defense game based off of it. Okay. Well,
Oh, I
Okay.
just had a couple of questions,
sure.
if that's okay.
Yeah.
One, I was kind of thinking about this. This was more just on the back burner, but I wondered if Five Nights at Freddy's would be okay for the thingy. Because I heard something about the first two games being 2D, but does that count? If no,
Mm.
you can just disqualify it for any future classes.
I've never
Do you know?
played any of those games. So I'm not
Okay.
sure, but just do a little bit, like, if you want to check it out, do a little bit of research on it. And if you think it fits, go for
Okay.
it.
Also,
Go ahead.
about the game project, I kind of had two ideas. One's a bit of an endless shooter, but not like it's just kind of an endless shooter type thing with a little bit of RNG, but not like too much. And the other
Okay.
one's, I can discuss it later if you.
No, say it now, because what you're talking about will give a lot of people other ideas, and me
Oh.
answering your questions probably answer a lot of other people's questions.
Also, the other idea was like a weird form of snake that was like basically it just always follows your mouse, essentially. It made sense in my head.
Okay. How would you make
I
that
mean-
3D?
Oh, touche.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, yeah, I was bouncing between those two ideas. And now that you say that, I'm probably gonna go for that little shooter thing.
Gotcha. Okay. I was gonna pull
Thank
up.
you.
Hang on, we don't need this anymore. What other, somebody else had an idea for a game. What other questions can I have, or can I answer?
My idea as as this class has progressed, I was kind of looking at the character models that we have available and just thinking of things, and I was thinking about this dynamic of like the player kind of possessing the character, and it being like a platformer game, and possessing the character would give the character power-ups, but you also have like the dynamic of like interacting with the character, so it's just one character you're interacting with, but it's like you and the character.
Yeah, I think that sounds really cool.
How easy would it be to like kind of visualize that possession dynamic, where I was thinking like the character would turn blue or something?
Yeah,
But
you could.
An easy layer to add on top.
Yeah, there are, so Unity has a particle system that can do all kind of cool stuff built into it. And so it could be something as simple as a particle view or a particle that you have around the character. You could do something super simple, like if you've ever played a game where, like, when you're low health or you took damage, the screen kind of on the edges would turn red or something like that. Something like that, where it changes colors based on who has you possessed, or maybe it's like some sort of texture around the border of the screen that indicates what is possessing the character. Something like that I think would work too. But that sounds like a really cool idea.
Thank you. I'm excited about it. I just came up with it during class.
That's a cool idea, definitely. Adrian, you asked where you can go to see previous. If you go to Zoom and then previous meetings, you can pull them up there. So this is January 10th, which I believe was Tuesday. So you just click on this and it will allow you to rewatch the whole video. Okay. Other questions that I can answer?
Hello. I have a question about scope for an idea I had.
Sure.
So I was looking at doing a very simple real-time strategy game with kind of very limited in scope, because I know those can become very extensive. Would that be still too out of scope for the time available for the class, or?
I don't think so. And yeah, like everybody's seen those mobile games where you're just kind of like placing stuff, and it's like you have a wave of enemies coming at you, and you're just like placing stuff, almost like a tower defense, but without like a really defined path. You could do it like that, where you are actually moving units around the map, and you could maybe just focus on, maybe not focus on the building aspect that is really common in RTSs, but focus more on the unit moving, or maybe you focus more on the building side and not the unit moving. That would be kind of my advice to you, because there's enough content in either one of those mechanics, like the base building and the unit manipulation. There's enough content in either one of those areas to make a full game.
Okay. I was thinking about doing something where like each unit was like a ship or something, kind of more like limited amount of units rather than like managing a large group of them.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And maybe you set it up to where it's like you have a handful of missions. You've got like 3 missions if you're going to do ship based, and you may like your mission starts and the object of the mission is to destroy the other base or destroy the other units, and all of your units are already existing and you can move them. And so it starts and you've got 3 units and they're all different things, and the strategy is how you move them and how you arrange them based off of their particular capabilities, and then you move them through that. So that kind of eliminates all of the building and that sort of thing, and the creation of units. They're just there, and the object of the game is to destroy the other whatever units, and you can go that way. That
Okay.
would be a good scope for what you can do.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
I had a couple questions if no one else did.
Go ahead, Rachel.
All right. So first one was, and I probably know the answer to this. Are we expected to be able to incorporate any sort of story in this in our project?
Don't have to. More than welcome to if it fits your game, and you might need to if it is required by your game. But no, there's story is not a huge aspect of this.
Okay. Then my second thing would be telling my idea for the game, seeing if the scope is possible. 3D platformer, but the player is able to like throw the camera onto walls, and then they can see their own player, but then have the camera interact with elements in the room. Type of thing.
Yes, I'm thinking. So you would want to limit, and you would almost want to predefine where the camera could be thrown, because otherwise it's going to be really difficult to handle the controls.
Okay.
Because the idea is really cool and I like it, but you might want to have it to where, like, okay, the camera can be thrown on this surface, and then when it gets thrown on that surface, it gets attached to a predefined point on that surface that it's almost like you have like hard-coded states. Like when the camera's thrown here, then we're going to go into this state, and then obviously the camera is going to move to that and change the perspective. But yeah, I think doing it that way would be good.
Okay, thank you.
Cool idea. Yep, definitely. Anything else I can answer right now?
I also had a question. I emailed you earlier about continuing my game. I saw your response. So in that game, it was basically a like 3D top down. So functionally, like it might as well have just been a 2D game. For the purposes of this class, would you like me to make it more of like an actual 3D environment? Okay.
Yep.
Can do. Thanks.
Welcome. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Well, we will stop here for today. I'm thinking Tuesday, Monday, there's no school, right, for Martin Luther King, but Tuesday we're back. Okay, so that won't affect us. So I will see you guys Tuesday at 11:30. We will pick up where we left off with the game design document. And again, I've said this before, going forward, once we get through the basics and I give you kind of all the information you need to really get started in your game, I'm going to give you probably a class a week off to work on your games, because that's really where you're going to learn the most, not me lecturing you about, different components of game design. There's got to be a balance between the content that I give you and you interacting with that content on your own. Because if I'm just constantly lecturing, okay, there's this, it's just too much. You have to be able to take it and put it into a game for you to really learn it. And so I want to balance that out by giving you guys enough time to really work on your specific game, because all of you are going in largely different directions with what you need to know. Okay. All right. So have a good weekend, and I will see you guys on Tuesday at 11:30.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
You're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very
Have a
welcome.
nice day.
See ya.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Hi, Professor.
Hey, how are you?
I was just going back into that Zoom, the previous recording sections, and I
Yeah.
can see the Jan 10th one, but there's no active link to actually like click on, at least for the last meeting. Did I need to like do something else on my end?
Hold on. I lied. Don't go under previous meetings, go under cloud recordings. It's the tab on the far right.
Okay.
Do you see that?
And then just click on the day.
Yeah,
I have
so
like
this is what I see when I look at it. So I
Yeah,
get cloud recordings.
I went
hold
to
on.
cloud recordings. Oh yeah.
Wait a
I'm sorry.
minute. I had to publish it.
Oh, okay. Let me refresh on my end. Okay, I see it now.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
it is under cloud recordings.
Okay, I had to publish it. Thanks for saying something. I'll make sure to do that for all these.
No problem. I just because I really like the content today and I wanted to go back over it. So I just wanted to have access to it.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
See you.
I think I sent you an email yesterday about wanting to meet 101.
Yeah, that's why I'm still here.
So yeah, I guess I just wanted to like I was thinking of some ideas for my game, and I was kind of thinking of doing something like a 3D platformer type game, or possibly a first person shooter. And I was just kind of wondering, which one do you think would take less time to complete?
They're both
Because
about the same.
yeah, cause I was just wondering, because I know I was actually going to make an RPG until you said on Tuesday not to do it, so because of time constraints. But yeah, and another thing too about this homework assignment that's due tomorrow night. So when I was doing it yesterday, I thought, because based on what you were talking about today, seems like you want me to like talk about a franchise and how it made the transition into 3D. But when I was reading the assignment instructions, I got the impression that I just had to like look at a franchise. Like, for example, I did the Super Mario Bros. Series for my paper, and I was comparing Super Mario Bros. 3 to Super Mario Sunshine, a 2D game and a 3D game, basically saying which one was more successful, one not. But based on what you were saying in class, I was kind of like second guessing myself. like, did I not do this correctly?
I got you. I mean, as long as you talked about the transition from 2D to 3D and what worked well and what didn't, that's all I'm looking for. So yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay, so you just want me to talk about, so if I'm just talking about like the game specifically, those two games, is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. That's good.
Okay, I was just wondering. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Do you have any other questions that I can answer for you?
Not right now. If I have any other questions, I'll send you an email.
Okay.
Yeah, take care.
You do the same. I'll see you.
Yeah, bye.